A big
My
dog.
Ellen,
father's my father's last dog was a Bernese Mountain Dog,
Oh, they are gorgeous. Yeah.
similar but different coloring.
Yeah.
Ellen had a Polish sheepdog, a Tatra Mountain sheepdog, which are they're rare and they're often mistaken for a Great Pyrenees.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a big white dog
Right. Yeah.
that they were trained to fight off wolves.
And Nazis.
Well,
Yeah,
It's
that too.
changed the fight off
And
Nazis.
Poland. Yeah.
In Poland during
Yeah.
the
I love
Second
the
World
big
War.
breeds. I just can't handle them anymore. So
Yeah,
with a
yeah.
We
bad
had a
knee,
chow
so
mix
I'm going to
named
the little
Guinness.
yippers.
Yeah.
Hi, Emily.
Hi there, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
We had a chow mix named Guinness,
A good name.
and I told Lydia we needed to get a blonde dog, and that way we'd have a black and tan.
I was gonna say,
Kilkenny,
call him
Kilkenny,
Guinness and Harp.
Kilkenny.
Well, we're dogless now, so uh,
Mhm.
alas, we have not been able to we just don't have the kind of yard
Yeah,
that
I
allows
get
us
it.
to let them out.
And they do tie you down. There are
They,
days when that's a problem.
and
Many
I'm only
days.
just back to being ambulatory, so you
Okay.
I couldn't have even walked them now.
No, no,
But
I'm
we
glad.
digress, and Jane has things to show us.
Yes, she does. She always has good stuff.
Well,
Always does. Yeah, it's 5:30 and I'm inclined since it's late in the day and Park is very tired. And honestly I am too. But still very eager to hear this presentation. I think some more people are drifting back from the last session and from this afternoon and he and I will watch the the waiting room. But Jane, why don't you go ahead and start out?
sure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for this time at the annual meeting to share some of what we are discovering in places in the homestead that are have not been open to the public, essentially. Some of our first floor spaces, yes, but there is a great deal of space on the second floor that's been administrative space for a long time. And so our goal here is to open those spaces, restore them, and unite them to the main block of the house that opened in 2020, finished that project in 2022. This presentation is going to be all images. It's just all a bunch of pictures that I'm going to explain as we go through. And some of what you'll see has to be explained because you won't have a very good way to be oriented to what you're seeing. So I will try to describe this as well as I can. So let's see, I will start. Um, let's see. Okay, I'm just going to keep this window open like this so I can see your faces at the same time as I'm looking at the photos. All right. So what I'm not going to show you first is a current photograph of the front of the homestead. I know that you all know that very well. So I'm going to begin with resources, some of the resources that we use to plan the kind of architectural investigation that we've just done. Resources that give us clues to what to look for when we're doing that kind of forensic work. So what you're seeing right now is I'm going to show you three photographs from a series that was made in 1916. At the time, the homestead was sold out of the Dickinson family to the Park family. So you'll probably recognize that you're looking at the on the right, the rear addition, which housed the kitchen laundry shed on the first floor, and then some kind of chambers on the second floor. That oak tree that is such a magnificent tree is right there in the center of the picture. And it is much smaller at this time. We're pretty sure it was standing there when Emily Dickinson was still alive, but it still is much smaller in this photo. So moving on. Okay, maybe not moving on quite fast enough. Here we go. Also from that same series of photographs, the conservatory, which stands in front of the east addition. So it stands in front of the dining room on the first floor and a bedchamber on the second floor. So that wing is right there on the right of the picture. And then finally, the north side of the house with the kitchen wing, the service wing, on the left side of the picture. So that's just kind of orientation to the house as it was when it left Dickinson hands. I'm going to zoom in on this photograph because I want to point out something, a couple of things that will be noticeable here. One is the dining room in the house that you're familiar with now has French doors, but originally had these windows that were just the same size and construction as all the other windows in this wing. It was the Park family who enlarged them to French doors. And so one of our restoration goals will be to restore them into their window configuration. You'll also see that there's this one-story porch here on the east side of the house. It's got, you'll see a tin metal roof up here on the second floor of that wing, and there similarly is a metal roof on top of that porch, which has a wooden floor. So those are other things to just to have in mind. These diagrams are the floor plans drawn by the Howe Manning Almy architect firm around 1916, as they were, they're kind of documenting the house as it was before drawing plans for the changes that the Park family wanted to make early on in their residence. So we'll start on the first floor here on the left. If you have been to the museum since we opened after restoring the main part of the house in 2022, you will have entered through this door into the kitchen area, and you might, or through a screen porch here on the north. And you might remember that the tour center desk was placed right about here. And then going directly south, you'd enter the dining room, and then a pantry over here on the left. So in this red box, this is the area where we're looking for evidence of the 19th century configuration of the house, any kind of utilitarian or some evidence of mechanical systems or domestic service systems that we can find. Directly above that, on the second floor, is a series of chambers here. And one of the unusual things to me about this, or one of the puzzling things, is that you can see all the other rooms are named, are titled, are named with a function, some kind of function. There's the shed, washroom, there's the kitchen, there are parlors, library, bedrooms, but these rooms are not identified. That's a shame. But our hypothesis right now is that these were chambers that were used for workday tasks or for residence for people who worked for the Dickinsons. But there's we'll need to learn more. So now I'm going to take you kind of on a tour through these spaces. Some of these photographs will orient you to the space so you can sort of have in mind what you probably have already seen before I show you some of the discoveries we're making. And you know what? It's fine with me if you want to jump in and ask a question while we're going through this, because it's a little bit picky. And, if you don't ask the question while you're looking at the photograph, it may not come back to mind. All right, so we're starting on the first floor at the end of that service wing, the wing that behind the homestead that runs up toward the garage. And here we're looking back into this area from that north door. Okay, so imagine standing on the threshold of the screen porch looking into that first area. And then now we have in this photograph, we've walked over here to this corner, this bottom left corner of the washroom, and we're looking back toward the east side of the house, the outdoor side. And you can see in this photograph that copper set kettle that we're all pretty familiar with, and the flue system for ranges, set kettle, and probably some other kind of stoves. All right, so now on the right in this picture is the door back out to that screen porch. To the left is what has been for the last 25 years an accessible bathroom. But this is after we've begun to take away the 20th century finishes. And I'm going to invite you to just peek through the door here, because I'm going to show you a close-up of what we're looking at there. So here we've taken paneling or wainscoting off the wall and find a couple of features here. One is this infill, brick infill, was filling up a place where the Park family had punched a hole through the wall and used this space as a coal storage space. So this was the coal chute for deliveries of coal. Later, probably mid-20th century, that was bricked up. More interesting for us is this difference in color here on the brick. When you look closely at it, if you were standing right in front of it, you would be able to see some variation here as you go up this angle. This is evidence of the staircase that went from the first floor up to the second floor. What you could call a service staircase. And there is a bit more to it because we also found these skirt boards, which are the boards that run up on either side of a staircase to anchor the risers and treads. So you can very easily see the outlines of the risers and treads here. At some point after the Park family took possession of the house, they wanted to make some alterations on the second floor. They wanted to use this space that we've been looking at for coal storage. So they took out the staircase and reused some of the materials. In this case, the skirt boards, there are 3 or 4 of them, they took upstairs to create a platform that placed a step downward into that rear wing. Just put it in a different location, so they wouldn't immediately open a door and fall down a step. So they just pushed that step further down into the hall and used these skirt boards as the subfloor. And I can show you a little bit later the upper side of that that change when we get to the second floor. So on the floor plan that you've seen, there's been this little tiny space that has been interpreted as probably the location of a privy. There's a similar space outlined on these plans on the second floor, which offers the exciting possibility of a second floor privy, and we'll get to that later. But this is some evidence of that. This is the location back in this corner of where that privy sat. If in taking up these floorboards or taking a photograph underneath them, in the very center, these bricks, that's the brick pit for that first floor privy. So now we have more of an answer for people who are asking about hygiene and sanitation in the 19th century beyond chamber pots. All right, so now we're kind of standing back in that washroom area, looking north toward the screen porch, toward the what's labeled the shed here. And what we're seeing here is you can see a difference in these two kinds of flooring. The flooring on the right, that is the level of the 19th century flooring. So this is the level of the flooring when this wing was constructed in 1855. On the left, you see this wood has a very different look, and that's because it is infill from the park period on top of the real level of the shed. So there was a step down coming in this door. Can you see my cursor as I move it around? Okay, good. So coming in this door, this is just a little foyer, a little vestibule. And going into the shed, you take a step down from that vestibule down onto the shed floor, which is about 8 inches, 10 inches below the level of the rest of the space. One interesting thing I mean, it's a small detail, but kind of interesting to us when you actually get into this forensic work is when you discover that the architects made a mistake. And their mistake was to put the entry to the privy here on the west side, when in reality, it was here on the south side of that little space. Okay, so moving on, we are now in the kitchen. The door at the right of the picture has for some time been since 2022 has been our main entrance. So we walk directly into this kitchen space. And there are only a couple of things to show you here. One is removing the 20th century flooring. We're now looking at, this is the 1855 flooring and the location of a cook range against this wall. So we also think that this brickwork is infill from the 20th century, and that a rectangular range sat in a cavity and then was supported by this infrastructure here. Okay, this is a tiny little detail. It's even hard to see in this picture, but right here, right in the center of the picture, there's a hole. And that is believed to be, right now, I mean, the theory is that was the location of the sinks. There are two sinks stored in a cellar that, we have not known where what their original location was, but that little hole in the floor gives us a gives us a hint, gives us a clue. And then and one reason that I really like all these little details in the kitchen is because the kitchen and the pantry were so significant in Emily Dickinson's life. So it's really fun to recover some of kind of the utilitarian bits and pieces that we can find. Now, a very small piece, one of the very tiniest pieces of evidence that we've identified is this little plate, or it's kind of I don't know, kind of a lozenge to fill the space of a hinge. So on this, what is now looks like a windowsill, this windowsill extends all the way back to the wall. And there are little locations of hardware along the face of that windowsill, including this spot where a hinge was removed and filled in with a piece of wood. So we think, if you're recalling the kitchen in the Evergreens, there's a drop-down table in that kitchen where it just folds down against the wall. And we think that this is probably the same arrangement here in the Homestead kitchen. Here we are, you can orient yourself by kind of standing in the middle of that kitchen room and looking back toward the dining room, back toward the main part of the house. And what we're looking at here is the white paint on the north wall of the 1813 house. So that's and the dining room wing that was built around 1840. So this is exterior paint that's encapsulated when the 1855 service wing was constructed. And so this is one of my favorites, is what we learned in the pantry. So these are the cabinets that were installed by the Park family. So we took all the cabinetry away, and that revealed, this is going to take a little explanation. So let me go back to this picture for a sec. On the right, there's a cabinet that's got a sink, right? And then if we go to this next picture, this is the location of where that cabinet and sink were. So we are looking directly toward into the main house, into the location of the parlor. The door you see here is a door to a little half bath that was put into the homestead in, again, by the Parks, probably around 1930. When we did the main block restoration, we patched that doorway in. More fun is this photograph on the left, where you can see these horizontal pieces of wood, which are cleats to support shelving. So the shelving appears to have run around all the way across at least two sides of the pantry. You can see the paint lines here, just running across. Down here, more cleats. There's some of what you're seeing is the attachments for the Park era cabinetry, but behind that is the paint evidence for the shelves during Emily Dickinson's time. On the floor, again, it can be paint evidence. So where architectural features are in place, people, of course, go back and freshen and repaint. But that leaves untreated areas that identify, of course, where cabinets or shelving stood on the floor. So we're seeing a little bit of that here. All right, this is another view, a little bit closer, of those cleats that I mentioned earlier as the support for the shelving. Here are two of these shelves that were discovered in the attic. They had been reused at some point to encase some kind of vent pipe. But what's kind of interesting about these is all of these, the cleats, the edges of the shelves, and here on the right, a window architrave that had been hidden behind a 20th century architrave. They're all grain painted. So this was a treatment for cabinetry and doors. There is something similar at the Evergreens during the 1850s and 1860s. So this is pretty conclusive evidence of what some of the decorative finishes were in the pantry Dickinson worked in. And in addition, it's kind of hard to get a perspective here, but we're looking up at the ceiling and we see this green paint that had been encapsulated behind a later ceiling. So I don't know. To me, that's just to be able to recover the layout and some of the decorative finishes in that space is pretty exciting. In the dining room, we're just going to do this pretty quickly, but there's really one interesting feature here that I want to show you. You see the yellow painted walls or cream painted walls. That is drywall. That's gypsum that was, for some reason, placed over the plaster walls. So the gypsum now is gone. The plaster walls are this kind of deep salmon color. There is another layer of paint underneath them, at least one or two layers of paint underneath that, but we don't have enough information about that yet. The fireplace, I'm just going to call your attention to the fireplace. It has a brick hearth. It sort of speaks as if it were a 20th century fireplace construction. And we think that's what it was. So on the left here, we're looking down at the brick hearth that was laid on top of a concrete pad. But underneath this, directly underneath this, is the hearthstone from whenever this wing was built. So it was either, I don't know, it was probably just too big to move out of the way. So it just dropped down. The owners just allowed it to drop down into the crawl space there. So now we're going to go upstairs. If you've been, we've used this room, the room that by process of elimination, we think may have been Lavinia's bedchamber. Now we call it the poetry room, and it's where we have those panels just explaining basic characteristics of Dickinson's poetry. So this is just to give you an orientation to where you are. As you might recall from our earlier project, all of the floors in the house, all of the original flooring, it sits underneath this maple strip flooring. Again, this is probably a change that the Parks made pretty early on. They put these sleepers on top of the original 19th century floorboards to level the floor. At least the original floors in this house are really kind of wonky, and they just slope down from the load-bearing walls, so that it's a pretty, in some places, kind of a dramatic drop-off. So these sleepers just help to level the floor, and so we're picking all of that up to get back down to Dickinson era floors. One of the one of the things that we've realized about the second floor sources of heat is that they were open fireplaces at first, and then were bricked up, and stoves were inserted for the source of heat on the second floor. So this is an example of, you can just sort of make out here where the bricks have filled in a stove, the pipe for a stove that sat in front. And it's hard to see, but on the floor, there is wood infill here where there had been probably a granite hearth earlier, but that's the boards have been sawn exactly to fit that space. Okay, interesting find in this room is behind this 1855 plaster and lath is earlier period decor. So this kind of nice gray and cream wallpaper. So there is some remnant of it back there, and I'm not sure that we're going to. I don't think we're going to look hard for more of it, because that would mean damaging more of the 1855 plaster, but it's nice to know it's there. Okay, in a room adjacent, we're going to go now to this chamber that's above the dining room. And picking up those 20th century floors in that room, we found that there was a painted border all around the room. And that might remind you a little bit of one of the spaces in the Evergreens that has it has a nice oak strip flooring around the edge, but kind of grungy pine flooring in the center. So this is some kind of choice where there could be tatami mats or carpets covering the untreated wood. There are still some carpet tacks around the edge of the room, and there are actually threads adhering to a few of those tacks. So maybe we'll get some more information about decor in that space. Again, this is a little hard to pick out, but what we're seeing here is evidence of a fireplace architrave that was in place against a wall, and that red border was painted around it. So right here in the center, you can see this bump out. And if you imagine looking at a fireplace and the vertical pieces on each side of the opening run down, often there's a decorative block as a foot. So that's what we're looking at here. And a little further down the wall is its mate. Now, oddly, this appears on a wall where there is no flue, no chimney of any kind. So this is a bit of a mystery. Was it purely decorative? What's it doing there? So we don't know the answer to that yet. Okay, now we're going to go into spaces that you probably have not seen. One of them has been the lowly former staff bathroom on the second floor. But when we started to remove the wainscoting in that room, we had to take out the sink, the bathtub, the wainscoting, all the plumbing. And this is what we found. This is some pretty wonderful kind of Gothic, very colorful wallpaper that has to be no later than 1870. And to give you another little view of this room, more wallpaper. There's this teeny tiny little closet that is probably maybe 20 inches wide, 24 inches wide, possibly. And you see this inside the closet, sort of this curve. That's the back of the main staircase in the main hall. So this room is adjacent on the second floor. It's adjacent to the main hall landing there. Interesting little tidbit right here toward the bottom of the picture. That is an opening for a heat vent. So there is some evidence of that the homestead had a furnace that served all of the first floor rooms in the main block. And this is the only space where there was no stove. There's no evidence. There's no way for it to have been equipped with a stove. So we think that this is a riser for heat from that furnace. And then just so you can see that paper in all its glory, here it is. So one of the points of all of this work we're doing is to, well, partly to, of course, restore the house as fully as we can, but then also to be able to talk more about the lives of everyone who occupied this house and who worked in this house. Irish immigrants, English immigrants, African American residents of Amherst, Afro-Indigenous residents who had some relationship with the Dickinson family. And so now we're going to go back into those unnamed, some of those unnamed spaces. Oh, well, one last thing in this bathroom. I showed you the pantry. Well, our first hint of what we were going to find was after we did the removals here in the pantry. I'm sorry, here in this former staff bathroom. Back in this corner was a little chase that kind of hid some pipes. And once that was opened up, we could look down through that chase, and that's when we first saw the paint and these shelving cleats and the actual baseboard for the pantry. So that was our first clue, and then eventually we got down to those removals in the pantry itself. Okay, so going back to going into the back of the house, those unidentified spaces. If you recall the location of that staircase on the first floor, so it rises toward the back of the house. And here it is on the second floor. So the landing on the second floor is about 2 feet away from the north wall. So it's a little bit tight. The boards have infilled, of course, to create flooring on the second floor, but those pockets for the balusters are still very evident. And you can see a change in the color of the floorboard also. So that means that the sill to hold the staircase and the balusters in place kept this little strip of wood from becoming more from becoming dirty or accepting paint if that was put on the floor. Right here in the corner is a little pocket, a little infill for a newel post. So we're going to see, we're going to look at some of the traffic patterns up here, which are really quite interesting. So when you come up off of that staircase, coming in this direction, the floor plan has you turning around immediately. So you can either turn around immediately. There's this little utilitarian space. We don't know exactly what that's all about. The second floor privy that I mentioned. And then there are these 2 chambers and what probably was a dressing room combination that served that served the adjacent bedroom. Okay, now we're standing pretty much where we come off of that staircase. So we're standing on the landing here, looking back out in the direction of the oak tree. And once again, we find that the architects made a mistake in how you needed to get into the privy, because very clearly that's the door opening there. It's not on the south side as they've drawn it, but it's on the west side. There you can see also in here these other lines for that are evidence of later walls. So when you look, if you're looking at the flooring up there on the second floor, this untreated wood, that's the configuration of this area when it was first built in 1855. You can see that it was very common to paint floors. That's standard treatment for floors, wood floors, at that period, but the walls were built before the floors were painted, as you can see. Later, those walls were taken out and the space reconfigured. So that's what you're seeing cutting across horizontally here. That's just a later evidence of a later configuration of this space. All right. So here we were looking at probably two different periods of whatever kind of commode they had here in the privy, and so that's yeah, that's just a little bit interesting. But then if we want to think about, so what's the plumbing for this? How does this really work? This area right here had been a bookcase for a long time, but really it was the location for a waste pipe. And then right in the corner, right there, is a chase for a vent pipe. So that's the chase for the vent pipe, which you can actually see in one of those pictures I showed you at the very beginning, protruding from the roof, which is no longer there, of course. And here we're standing kind of near the window, the northmost window there on the second floor, just looking back at these two spaces. The one immediately in front of us, the floor is painted green, and the one behind, it looks kind of green, but actually it was painted red. And then other floors painted gray. So they made a lot of choices up there. Just a couple of odds and ends. These are fun little things that you could just come across in this kind of work. In the underneath the threshold of one of the doors back in that area is this little scrap of wallpaper. It's not we haven't seen that before. We asked a decorative finishes expert can you tell us anything about this paper? So he thinks it's probably 1850s and machine printed. Then in another space, we took down a bracket against a painted wall, and behind that was this is not wallpaper, but it is the pattern of the wallpaper that telegraphed through onto the plaster. And this was pretty exciting, and now a little bit puzzling, because this is the very wallpaper we found scraps of in the main hall and recreated that pattern partly through guesswork. So this gives us a little bit better understanding of how that pattern is supposed to happen. But that was a surprise, because this is in a closet. So I just like these. I'm always affected by when I see evidence of foot traffic from that original period. This happened when we restored Emily Dickinson's bedroom, where we saw scuffed wood right in front of the known location of her bureau. That, to me, that was just really affecting. And so is this, that we get these hints of their patterns of life. All of this is this part of the homestead. This is a parlor. It was in the very same condition as these photographs that I'm showing you. But this is the outcome. So the house kind of gives up its secrets and gives us enough to work with to bring back some semblance of the actual environment, the surroundings, the atmosphere in which this poet lived and worked. And I think that is what I have to show you today. So if you have any questions, I would be glad to try to answer. And it could be that some of my answers are going to be, well, we don't know yet.
Could you stop the share so we can see?
Yeah. There we go.
Peter has a question.
Hi, Jane.
Hey, Peter.
That was fascinating. I'm the son of a builder, so I think about structures more than most people. I'm also work in the woods and think about wood products and where in the landscape they came from. So I'm really curious about wood types. I saw lots of really wide pine flooring. And I wonder if anything else interesting, like some of the floorboards looked like maybe they were chestnut or anything, that level of detail that came up in the process.
Yeah, so far, all we have seen is chestnut and pine, and predominantly yellow heart pine. So hard pine. Yeah, yellow hard pine.
Hard pine, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And they are what, it's interesting, the little nuances of the width of the boards, as I'm sure you're familiar with. The fashions of practices in the very earliest period of the house are wide boards, and then some practices they become narrow, and then they become wide again. So we're seeing a little bit of everything. Let's see, Eliza.
Thank you, Jane. That was so riveting. I'm surprised at how gripped I was by this, and also by your discipline in terms of not speculating. And so it's kind of a perverse question of mine, but especially part of that, you're quite excited about the pantry, the discoveries in the pantry. Would you speculate wildly for us about some of the insights you hope to gain? Like project a little bit into the future or talk about your hopes and dreams in terms of what some of these things might tell us?
Yeah, I think at the most sort of pedestrian level, I want to connect the stories we know, or the accounts that have shown up in, well, a lot of them actually just in letters, to the spaces. So the reason the pantry to me is so interesting and exciting is because of what we know about Emily reading poetry to her Norcross cousins in the pantry, and they were outside, right? They were outside. Emily was behind the shutters. So being able to visualize that moment is kind of profound to me, and to have a sense, I believe that account included something like something about the level of light. It was dark, or the cool, dark pantry. I think it was something like that. And to be able for the museum to kind of reproduce that atmosphere, for the imaginations of our visitors. That's kind of
Yes.
in general, that is the goal.
Yes, that's wonderful. That's exactly the kind of answer I was hoping for. Then, and the idea that these are platforms for the imagination, to kind of reconstruct what's happening in the house and how they correlate to what we've read and thought about. It seems endlessly fascinating. So.
Yeah, I am very much a believer that being in the presence of a physical object or space that has some kind of connection is evocative. It's not like magic. It's not kind of woo-woo, but it is. It helps the imagination. For some people, it gives them a little point of connection, like, well,
a launching pad.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Don.
Yeah, so some years ago we were fortunate enough to be on a tour of the house that you led. We thought that was cool because you don't normally lead tours, and you took us into the basement, and there was lots of majestic, I guess, like residue stone and metal and glass and all kinds of. If I remember, was there gravestone down there? Yeah, and so God help any archaeologists that went through my basement. They would find all kinds of stuff. But I was just wondering if you have found anything more down in the basement.
No, and the basement has gotten a pretty thorough going over because of kind of the mechanical systems we've had to put in there. The things that are that remain, where we can do something with it, are those two sinks. There are also two cupboards. One is a freestanding kind of jelly cupboard that there is a reference to it. And then there's a very thin concrete layer on top of the original granite pavers. So those granite pavers come with the 1813 house. Now, those, of course, will remain in place. There's not a whole lot to do with them, but it's nice to know that exists, that it hasn't been disrupted. Yeah. Did that answer?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Emily.
So I know the family moved to North Pleasant when the children were quite young. When they moved back, did Austin have a bedroom?
Well, I think the timing of that, if he had one, it wasn't for very long. Because, he was in Boston. Let's see. I think he went to taught school in Sunderland before he went to Boston. But he was there, I think, through into 1853. So
and they moved back in what year?
1855. Yeah. And then occupied the Evergreens exactly 1 year later. So
okay, so probably didn't have much of a presence in the homestead.
No.
Beyond early childhood.
Right.
and so forth. So I have a completely different question for you. You occupied those spaces for a number of years. That was where your office was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you and others have occupied that space for quite some time.
Right.
How has it been for you knowing that you occupied that space and then, coming to see, this unveiling, if you will, of that space you occupied, and what are the resonances for you of being there and then going into this process? Maybe that
Well,
might be a mighty big question.
well, I can back that up just a little bit because so my office, my first office was at the Evergreens for 2 years. I was all alone in that house. So that gave me a deep, deep appreciation for that house. Next, I was in on the second floor, the very back of the house. So that space where we were looking at the staircase and the privy and all that, that was my office. And then finally, my office was on the third floor
Oh,
of the homestead. So every so often, so I have considered it a real privilege to have such a close contact with these spaces. On the other hand, sometimes I feel a little discomfort, like my livelihood depends on me walking through Emily Dickinson's personal space. But that's just, sometimes it just strikes you in a mood. So in general, I think that I am happy to not have an office in that house and to be able to treat it really as it should be treated. That we shouldn't, I'm glad we don't have a gift shop there anymore. I'm glad we don't have offices there anymore. I think it deserves to be really wholly given over to learning about Emily Dickinson's life and work and life ways of that period and education around all of that. So to me, it's exciting. I'm very excited about how clear this evidence is that we've been able to uncover.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
This is Benigno. I'm very curious that you feel queasy about hanging out and kind of like intruding in private space. And at the same time, most of what we do, it's intruding into what? The poetry, the spiritual spaces, the cognitive patterns of this work and ferment. So I wouldn't be so scrupulous, considering what else we're doing. And thank you, because actually the thing that does happen is when you provide the depth and the intricacy of the physical, basically material history of life work at some level. You're also providing a kind of, I don't know, mirror of what we do when we read. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that comment. We're doing these NEH teacher workshops last week and this coming week, and one of the teachers asked a similar question or made a similar point. And I tend to default to I think Dickinson wanted us to read her poetry. I think she wanted it to be published after her death, and I always look for the little hints she gives us about giving us, quote unquote, permission. Like her Fame is a Bee poem. To me, that's a great statement about, okay, publish the poetry, read it, make a museum out of my house. Yeah, I'm all fine with that. But I get, you're right. I do have these little queasy moments. Leanne, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. That was really fascinating. And not to put too fine a point on it, I wasn't going to even bring this up, but just this issue of, the queasiness and the conflict between preserving and respecting and putting it out to the world. Ellen and I were actually at the museum was it May? Because she had gone to her 50th Mount Holyoke reunion. And so of course we stopped at the museum, and our guide, now I forget his name, a young fellow, some of the guides, they just tell you what's there, but he was philosophical, and he also used the phrase, no, this is, presenting all this was this is a morally gray area, was the phrase he put it. But he says, I've made it now, but he says, but now I'm fascinated with the evergreens, and this is my thing now. But in any case, so before I that was after I put my hand up that I came up with this this question.
I may not be quite as queasy as that guide, but
okay, yeah, it was kind of a woke expression for him.
Okay,
I think he felt strongly about it, but he was a tremendous guide, though. But first I wanted to say that wallpaper in the staff that was uncovered in the staff bathroom, that is just exquisite.
Yeah.
I was amazed.
It's
and
amazing.
Also now I'm trying to remember I was when it was kind of moving when you talked about how, what a sensation it was for you to see the footpaths that people had worn, because there are actually signs of life that went on in the house. And I was just thinking, my gut reaction, it's a shame to cover it up, but obviously you're going to have to.
Well, I have a couple of comments about that. One is, all right, I forgot the first comment. The second one is, there is a method, and I've seen this done in some historic houses and other kinds of museums, where there is a material on which you can print that very, the very image.
You can reproduce
to protect the original, but so you can demonstrate what that
kind of like doing a brass rubbing, I suppose, of the surface. Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know. Those thoughts kind of they have been in the air just a little bit. So
I'm sure.
I think we might have to crowdsource where we go with that.
What you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Peter?
Or one more thought, Jane. I mean, I have some thoughts about the board widths that you mentioned that maybe we can follow up with another time. But the hearthstone in the floor crawl space, there's a little brook just east of the homestead that Amherst folks call Heatherstone Brook, but shows up on most maps as Hearthstone Brook. And I've long wondered how many hearthstones in Amherst Center come from that, and if there was some quarry in that watershed. And I believe it goes all the way up to Mount Orient. And Amherst College owns land up on the Pelham side there. So, I don't know what the Brock is, but I'm sure somebody in town probably knows something about the origins of those things.
Yeah, there is there was a quarry in Pelham. I'm sure you know about that. So there's this Pelham gneiss, I guess it is, that kind of granite. I don't know what that substance is underneath the floor. I've only seen the photo, but we will know.
Yeah.
We get to know. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming back at the end of a fabulous annual meeting. I appreciate your coming to hear what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jane. This was absolutely fascinating. It made me think, gee, that's what I should have done with my life. Crawl around and look for these little holes.
Yeah. One of my, in a former life of mine was, I started out in archaeology. And that's
Right.
why
Makes sense.
that makes this very satisfying.
I'll bet. Yeah.
And everybody, thank you so much for staying with us till 6:30 or whatever time it is. I think most people who are still here are probably at either 5:30 or 6:30 in the afternoon, but maybe some are here.
Dan, much later.
On the
Much later,
contrary.
it's nearly going to be closer to midnight.
Yes, yes, poor Park is 11:30. And so thank you very much. It's been a wonderful meeting. Take care. Again, I am going to turn on my Zoom again after 8. It was to invite people from other time zones. But if anybody wants to just hang out a little bit for an hour or so, you're more than welcome. If you don't, that's fine too. So take care.